veterans training and employment. There was a recent Los Angeles Times article about a 36-year-old Air Force vet returned to California, military trained in information technology and satellite communication, thought he would be able to secure a decent job and found himself at something that was close to minimum wage in the men's department at Bloomingdale's. At least he has a job, but not one commensurate with his skills and training and experience. So given the veterans population and the unemployment rate that we have experienced in California, and given the amount of money flowing into job training and efforts, and I assume, at least in some part, into veterans training and job efforts, frankly, I'm having a difficult time pinning down exactly what we do in the state of California for veterans job training and employment. I'm having difficulty finding a specific report. Maybe one exists, and maybe it just didn't hit my desk as to what the various agencies that receive state and federal money do for job training and veterans. And I guess my questions relate to performance metrics. And I'll start with the workforce investment boards. Are there performance metrics that deal specifically with veterans training and jobs? How do you grade yourself? How do you determine whether you've been successful or a failure? And what have the results been? In other words, what are the dollars? What are the dollars moving toward job training and jobs for vets? And what's it equate to in terms of dollars per vet trained and employed? That's we'd call that a compound question as lawyers, right? So I'll object to my own.
There's a lot of commas in there.
I'll object to my own question on that basis and sustain the objection, but I'd like for you to answer it anyway if you can.
Yes, sure.
Sometimes there's a run-on sentence.
We'll take that as a rhetorical question.
The local workforce investment boards do, as required in federal law and in our state policy, target veterans as a priority group for services. I don't have the quantitative information you're looking for in terms of numbers of veterans served and trained and placed in jobs, but they are held to performance measures. All local workforce boards are held to performance measures that are established in federal law and negotiated with the state. And that's entered employment, meaning they're placed in a job, retention of that job, and wages and wage gain. And with the new law, we'll have the attainment of industry value skills credentials on top of that. We can get you data on the numbers of veterans served through the local workforce boards and the performance for that particular population.
But do we set goals and objectives for this, or is it just we get money and if we win, we win, and if we don't win, we don't win, and if we get 5, we get 5, if we get 10, that's a good, I mean, I'm just curious, do we set, if we were private industry, we'd have goals and objectives, and you either meet your goals and objectives or you don't, and if you don't, there are consequences. Have we, and even though the federal government can specify that we do certain things as a condition of receiving federal money, I assume that that does not preclude us as a state from setting a higher standard or from being more specific when it comes to certain categories. I'm focusing on vets, but we could pick any other category that you'd like to pick. Is that a fair, I mean, can't we do that, and do we do that?
Yeah, we do, and we're going to do it even better in the new state strategic plan. We are going to set outcome goals for specific populations, including veterans, but also ex-offenders and people with disabilities, low-income adults, and dislocated workers. And it's not just about the WIOA federal dollars that come in through the Employment Development Department that the local workforce boards administer, but it will be goals set in collaboration with the community college system, with adult schools, with the broader system of education, workforce development, and employment services. Because as I said before, it's not going to take one funding stream or several funding streams to really move the needle on employment for one population. It's going to take an integrated approach that is really built around a vision in each region and connected to the employers that are driving regional employment.
And while one more question, Mr. Chair, if I may, and while my focus right now with this specific series of questions is fairly narrow, I think it can be applied across the board. Will you, maybe you've mentioned this, but will you include stakeholders from outside the traditional educational environment, community colleges, K through 12, in developing these performance metrics? For example, will you involve the veterans organizations in this narrow area in seeking to set goals and objectives for these workforce investment boards to meet?
Yes, sir.
I would also add that we talked about this aligned framework within the labor agency of targeting our resources in the most effective way. We do have programs like the Employment Training Panel that are very aggressive around investing in projects to train veterans, both within an existing employer's incumbent worker population, particularly those employers that when they have a group of individuals that they need to hire, committing to certain percentages of veterans be included in that, and then the Employment Training Panel enters into a direct contract with that employer to provide resources for that type of training. We also have discretionary funds at the agency and department level, and when funds are available, specific veterans-targeted grants are made, particularly to veterans-serving organizations at the local and regional level, and part of that process involves outcomes associated with the investment of those dollars. So veterans are a very high priority for our agency.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Roth. Senator Pan, and then Senator Padley.
Okay. Thank you. Actually, many of my questions follow on Senator Roth's, and I'm, certainly agree with him that we need to have good outcome measures, and in addition to that, not merely measure, but also have performance metrics as well. I certainly support and agree with him about being sure we the focus on veterans, also particular interest in people with disabilities as well, and I know the other categories as well. You mentioned that there is in process and development the new set of outcomes, additional set of outcomes, and metrics that you're bringing people together. When is the anticipated date by which that process will lead to, in which you will actually identify the outcome measures and the performance metric and performance standards for those? When do you anticipate that to be completed by?
Well, the first phase of that process would be developing our strategic plan under the new federal WIOA. We need to submit that plan in a combined fashion to the U.S. Department of Labor by March of 2016. That will then guide the development of regional planning at the local level and individual local plans. And those types of performance criteria will be embedded in those plans.
And the state plan draft will be complete in October, in the fall.
October of 2015?
Correct. And we'll take that plan out on the road and have stakeholder input in every region of the state, including all the groups that are served by these workforce education training programs. We also have a dashboard in state statute 2148 by Kevin Mullen last year that sets up a performance system that looks across programs and silos, so we can look at apples and apples instead of apples and oranges, and have a better sense of what's working well and what needs more attention or more resources or some tweaks in service delivery.
So just to clarify, let's just start with the dashboard. Is the dashboard up in place, or when is that expected to be available?
We're developing the dashboard also.
Okay.
So we're working across departments to develop the dashboard. So it's on the same track as the state strategic plan. It'll be an important component of our cross-system metrics that we're developing.
Okay, so I just want to clarify some of the timelines here. So dashboards on the same time track. We have a state strategic plan, that at least the draft that will be for public review in October of 2015.
Correct.
So not until, and then you mentioned March 2016 is a federal submission, correct? When would you? I realize you can't always predict how long the feds will take, but I mean, in some senses, at least when it comes to outcomes, I realize that, money and some other things may not be from the feds, may be pending the application, but what I'm hearing is that it's not until 26, when are we going to actually start have the dashboard and that we as the legislature and of course the public, more importantly, will be able to have information about what our performance standards are and how we're doing. I mean, so we have a federal submission 2016. When do we anticipate this being able to, that we'll have something to look at?
Just as the goal of developing the state level plan involves multiple agencies,
Sure.
when we submit the combined state plan, it will go to multiple federal agencies for review process. The expected date to have that review completed would be by July 1st of 2016, and that we have a operational workforce system under WIOA at that point.
Okay, and
Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
go on.
We will start, we're using over the course of the next year, we'll be using that time to gather data so that when we actually start the implementation in the summer of next year, we'll have data that we can actually start reporting on from the local programs, from the local workforce investment boards.
By which date? You said?
By June 15, we'll have data.
By June 2015?
Correct.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. Okay.
I'm sorry, June 16.
June 16th, okay, I said, wow, June 20th, I like
Right,
that. Okay, June, okay, so, I mean, I think that, and I understand the federal application, I mean, our outcome measures, well, certainly we wanted to line it up with what we're trying to work with, get with from the feds.
Right.
In some sense, it's also a metric for ourselves, so hopefully we're not holding that up just because of that, right?
Correct.
Okay. That's right. All right, thank you.
The U.S. Department of Labor, along with the Department of Education, are finalizing a regulation package that we now expect to have available to states by mid-spring. We don't have a date that's more specific than that. There's the strong possibility that there will be some refinements to the act that occur through that reg process that would then influence our planning cycle as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pan. Senator Pavley.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. Also in the governor's proposal was money for apprenticeship programs. Could you articulate his vision in that regard? There's a lot of interest in throughout the state in making those connections between relevant jobs in a particular region and providing an educated workforce. So a combination of K-12 or mostly high school, community college workforce investment, and key employers in the area working together in developing that career pathway, if you will, that's directly relevant and would provide jobs in a local setting. There is a dollar amount, it's sort of called out separately. Is it separate than CTE, or what will it look like?
It will be a separate allocation to the apprentice program. Those funds will allow the restoration of the classroom hour reimbursement rate back to 2007, 2008 levels. I think that's the 14.7 million in the governor's proposal. And then we were extremely pleased to see another commitment of approximately $15 million for the development of non-traditional apprentice programs. It's a challenge, and we are optimistic about how we proceed, and it will require working closely, particularly with the community colleges, the Workforce Investment Board, the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, to market and develop viable non-traditional apprentice programs. So those would be developing apprenticeship within the context of a biotech sector, advanced manufacturing sector, a healthcare sector. There are really no non-traditional viable programs today in the private sector. So the challenge of effectively expanding apprenticeship opportunities, we're going to direct a multi-agency approach to doing that. We're also working with a number of potential applicants to seek funds from a $100 million apprenticeship initiative that the U.S. Department of Labor now has available to states as well. So we will be working with regional partnerships that are forming around putting those proposals together to develop the strongest proposals possible from the state.
There's a lot of interest on the local level. For example, College of the Canyons down in my district, they have a workforce development site on campus. They have a partnership with some of those big employers, some in biotech, but also Disney has a big studio there and everything, who are very interested in working collaboratively, but there could be some models that are already operating in the state, whether it's Long Beach or whatever it is, that could be facilitated and maybe expanded in other areas as well.
And part of the process really involves helping employers understand the benefits of an apprenticeship structure, the structured curriculum, the level of commitment that the employer makes to the individuals in the apprenticeship program. So part of our work will really be communicating those benefits to employers.
Several of us went to Switzerland a few years ago to look at their model apprenticeship program, and those businesses had really profited by keeping Swiss young adults in their country and directed towards those large employers, and it's been a very successful model. But you're right, the private sector is invested as well as the public sector.
Very much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Block.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question follows up on Senator Nielsen's question. You know, it's clear that adult education and career technical education are a critically important gateway to a job, to a career for a lot of our students. And we've heard a lot about how you're working with K-12 and community colleges. The PPIC tells us we need about about a million new bachelor's degrees by 2025, and we're told that about 40%, more than 40% of the jobs will require bachelor's degrees by 2025. First of all, do you all think that's an accurate assessment? And if so, then the next question is, are your agencies also working with CSU and UC, not for transition from education to the workforce, but perhaps for transition back from the workforce to higher education? Because we certainly value the jobs that are created with CTE and adult ed, but if 40% of the jobs require a bachelor's degree, for an even better life, many of the folks will want to go on from there. So where are you on that?
I think that I don't want to quibble with the PPIC data. Georgetown University has also done a study and looked at California's middle skill jobs. And as Mr. McMahon pointed out, most of the jobs available over the next decade are going to be the result of replacements. And most of those replacements are going to be in high skilled jobs, but occupations that don't necessarily require a four-year degree. So the Georgetown data says that about 40% of all the jobs, nearly 50% of all the jobs in the economy, the biggest percentage by far, are in those middle skill occupations that don't require a four-year degree. However, we are working very closely with the UCs and the CSU to make sure that the education and training investments in the programs give all students and workers the choice to pursue further educational attainment, including a four-year degree. But most of the jobs open over the next decade are not going to require a four-year degree, but will require some level of post-secondary education and training, and especially of industry-valued skills credential.
It's interesting also how many students with a four-year degree are cycling back through community colleges for a more technically oriented degree.
Goes both ways.
Yeah, when I was a community college board president, I was shocked at the number of post-bac students we had coming to community colleges to learn a skill to get them a job. And that's precisely the point of my question. Too many of our students, it seems to me, at the CSU or UC are majoring in things, putting 4 or 5 or 6 years of their life into careers that don't exist anymore. So I would hope, and it sounds like you all are working with the CSU and the UC as well as the community colleges to look at how to better direct those students into viable professions.
And if there is a central theme in the work we do and in the Federal Act, it's really to fund meaningful training for individuals that does connect to what's occurring in the labor market and what employers need. So we're very much committed to
Okay, and one thing I'd question about the Georgetown study, I assume is national, or is it just California?
It did every state, actually, including California.
And it showed California as having majority of jobs not requiring a BA in the future?
Yeah, between 47% and 50%, not requiring a BA, but some level of post-secondary education and training, what they call middle skill jobs.
Okay, which leaves another 50% that does require a BA, it sounds like.
Correct.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact breakdown on the high skill which require a BA and the low skill that don't require even a high school degree or at least a high school degree. But those two components together are just about the same as the percentage of middle skill jobs.
Yeah, understanding a BA is not for everybody and that the work as CTE and adult ed are critical, it's important not to close the door to that opportunity for people, so thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator Block. Senator Mitchell.
Thank you, Senator Leno. I represent Trade Tech in LA, and I was struck, quite frankly, when I walked the campus and had a new appreciation for the number of students there that were walking around with BAs who'd come back to Trade Tech to go to their culinary school or whatever the case may be. So that was new news to me. We've talked about, a number of my colleagues have talked about some of the vulnerable workers amongst us, veterans, others. My question, and all of that triggered for me, a number of conversations we've had in my district office and testimony here from CalWORKs recipients who seem to feel that they are not encouraged, even segregated from many WIB programs and EDD programs under this new design, particularly given the fact that the governor said in his budget proposal that he felt his new workforce development initiative was one of his anti-poverty measures. How are we going, how will the CalWORKs job training program, if at all, be kind of enveloped in this overall plan, or will it?
Oh, it will, yeah. The Department of Social Services, Will Lightbourne, who oversees CalWORKs in California, is at the table with us. So we're really working hard to figure out how we can make sure that low-income adults, CalWORKs recipients, are connected to pathways to those jobs and with those employers that are driving regional employment. What he's trying to figure out is how we can move 58 county social services agencies to work together with our workforce boards at the regional level and our community colleges to connect those participants to those very pathways. But it takes a great deal of integration and a great deal of coalition building at the regional level, not just in Sacramento, but across the state.
Absolutely.
And beyond that coordination at the departmental level with our discretionary investment and investment through the employment training panel, we are working directly with community level organizations to develop very specific targeted training programs to the disadvantaged individuals within the community. So we do have a pretty strong track record of that type of investment.
And so I think that's going to be critical that really does trickle down to the local level, and because, you know, the recipients are talking about their experience with their eligibility workers, where they are not being encouraged or tracked into your program. So, and I appreciate working with 58 different counties. That's going to be a minute, but clearly a culture shift needs to take place based on their experience. I'm not sure whether to pose this question to you or perhaps to finance in the second panel, but my district office staff have met with adult ed advocates who've expressed a concern that there's not enough adult ed representation on the allocation board to make, from their perspective, informed decisions about how the funds are going to be used.
I'm hearing that too.
All right, okay, great. How would you respond to that?
That
Senator
it
Pavley just said
probably
ditto.
should be deferred to the next panel.
Okay.
But we are
I wasn't
certainly
sure.
pleased that workforce is represented on the adult ed allocation panels in the governor's proposal.
I'll raise that with the second panel then, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mitchell. I especially appreciate your CalWORKs concern. Something to keep an eye on, more than keep an eye on. If there are no other questions, one more, Senator Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the presentation. And I also agree that there needs to be strong accountability provisions to ensure that the students remain the highest priority. What I've witnessed in our community colleges is that they get involved with the various employment opportunities that exist in each respective area. As an example, the Mount San Jacinto College system put together a viticulture curriculum at the community college because of our growing wine country. We also have a strong presence of biomedical engineering at Guidant, Abbott Vascular that's in our community. Who is it that is coordinating with each local respective community to ensure that the curriculum is germane to the classes that these kids want to get jobs in, number one? And number two, we invest a fortune in incarcerating people in the state of California in excess of $50,000 a year. And I'm a strong proponent of bringing these job skills, if you will, into our institutions so that we can reduce the recidivism rate that plagues local government, particular counties with the local jails. And we just see a revolving door of justice. We need to prepare these individuals with job skills so that when they come out of our local jails, so they can find appropriate jobs. So how can this all meld together?
I would start with the community college question. Certainly in our work with the Chancellor's Office of the Community Colleges, they've developed initiatives that really push forward a industry-based or sector navigator type concept that helps those colleges connect to local employers, understand the importance of working with a local employer to design curriculum and degrees that match the needs with that particular employer. And that's certainly a theme of what we're trying to achieve through the state combined planning process. Employers will be key in the process, and again, matching up training with the specific job-related needs that local employers within that region have is a very central element of what we're trying to do.
As just a quick follow-up, if you don't mind, forgive me for interrupting you, but what I've seemed to have observed is that there's this turf war, if you will, between K-12, K through 12, and community colleges. How do you envision that we can bring them together to assure that we're kind of marching to the same drum, if you will, and providing these opportunities to these people?
Yeah, he handed that one off to me because it was an easy one. We are going to use our regional planning process and our local planning process to get to all the players to the table and break down the turf issues and break down the silo issues.
Good.
But we've seen great collaboration in the 70 adult education planning regions that the third panel will talk more about. So I think there's a willingness, more than a willingness, there's a lot of great examples of K-12 and community colleges and local workforce boards and the CSUs and UCs really working together to solve industry's problem to move people into good jobs. Everywhere, Sacramento to Long Beach, to San Diego and the Bay Area, just really terrific examples of how this stuff is lining and working together. So it's very positive.
And certainly your question relative to incarcerated individuals and starting to introduce vocational type of training while they're still incarcerated is an issue that we have supported in the past with discretionary money at the state level, and is certainly an issue that will be addressed as we go through the planning process.
Right, we have just one more second on the incarceration issue and recidivism. AB 2060 is using some of the trust fund money, the anti-recidivism trust fund money, to invest in collaboration regionally with local workforce investment boards and community corrections partnerships. So they're at the table. They weren't initially in all parts of the state around realignment at the table for planning out the AB 109. However, we're using these dollars to build new partnerships in collaboration with workforce development and parole, probation, mental health, courts, and other county services. There's a great example in Sacramento that was actually on the front page of this Sacramento Bee recently that talked about an apprenticeship program in Sacramento that connects ex-offenders to high-wage construction jobs on the arena construction through a community workforce agreement, which is just one example of many of how using workforce development creatively to move people into good jobs. This kind of thing is happening across the state.
I believe those kind of collaborations and partnerships are the path we ought to be embarking on.